Hi students, welcome to the lesson Visual Persuasion and Cognitive Systems. In this lesson, we try to bring to you how neurological networks coordinate one another to send signals to amygdala and root thalamus. We also try to explain to you this process in real terms. It must be remembered that a person's response to visuals is neither logical nor rational. The lesson also tells us that latest neurological research points out to the fact that visuals can be processed and can form the basis of future action without passing through consciousness. It would also be pertinent in this lesson to know how susceptible the children and youth to emotions through the visuals in the way they think and act. To inform students as to how visual persuasion happens in human eyes, to supplement the students' knowledge with the cognitive processes. Because the history of the evolution of one's brain's neurology is also the evolving story of human communication as we trace the path of vision through the various visual processing areas in the brain. What emerges instead from brain research is the awareness that although sight may indeed begin with the light hitting the retina, vision occurs deep within the brain, and that perception, the process by which we derive meaning from what we see, is an elaborate symphony played first and foremost through the unconscious emotional system. With neural equipment evolved over millions of years, with our neural maps for the brain's development already in place, humans today advance according to the same principles by which their ancient ancestors developed. For the brain's perceptual system, visual experience in the form of fine arts, mass media, virtual reality, or even video games is merely a new stimulus entering the same pre-wired circuits we have inherited as part of our brain potential and is processed in the same way. In other words, visual media is just as real to the emotional brain as any other visual experience, and it contributes just as much to the brain's synaptic wiring. In the same way that it can be argued that we are what we eat, it can also be argued that how we see and consequently how we behave is primarily the sum of our perceptual experience. As Antonio Damasio observed, neurological research has shown us that we are not primarily thinking beings who also feel, but essentially feeling beings who also think. Thus, neural research provides a rich heuristic for new insight into all aspects of existing visual communication theory. As the emerging picture becomes clearer of how the brain's learning and memory systems are fed by visual experience and how its major pathways and modules work both independently and in concert with one another to complete the process of perception, we find limitless opportunities for new research in visual studies. Visual researcher R.L. Gregory and others suggested that visual perception first developed in response to moving shadows on the surface of the skin, which would have given warning of nearby danger to recognition patterns which when eyes developed optical systems. Richard Dawkins of Oxford University observed that it would not be surprising to find that all animals that have survived the process of natural selection possess some sort of rudimentary eye, and he and others speculated that the eye most probably began as a patch of light sensitive pigment that cued the animal to whether it was day or night. The eye, a survival device that functions to detect change from non-change, begins the process of making meaningful sense out of light from the external world. As the signal is carried via the optic nerve to the visual cortex, the internal brain takes control of the process. The eyes are, in fact, a direct extension of the brain into the environment. The last and most sophisticated of our senses to evolve, our eyes send more data more quickly and more efficiently through the nervous system than any other sense. Characterized by cells responsive to minute differences in shape, direction, degrees of slant and color, the eyes represent the first stage in segmented sequential process that eventually results in meaning and all that is implied by seeing. The optical system, an interface between the brain proper and environment, is a synchrony of millions of nerve cells firing in particular patterns in parallel and sequential processing. Within the system, cells work separately and in concert with one another to activate and to inhibit certain responses using continual feedback looping to hone the image that we see. Perception, the process by which we derive meaning through the experience, is a dynamic interactive system that utilizes built-in genetic programming to synthesize sensory input, memory and individual needs. The eyes are only an initial part of equation and can in fact be bypassed altogether. Experiments with blind people have shown, for example, that we actually do not need eyes to see. Patients fitted with a device turning low-level video pictures through a camera mounted next to the eyes into vibrating pulses fed to patch of skin on their backs have also learned to see. The skin conducts the signals which the brain can then convert into neural imagery that can then be interpreted as sight. The vision utilizes the rudimentary structures of perception, but does not result in understanding. Because it lacks the emotional processing through the limbic system that is essential for meaning, it gives us a clue as to how important emotional processing is to perception. Without it, we are in fact lost and could not function adequately in everyday life. Perceptual process begins with ambient light that bounces off objects in the environment. This optic array is focused by the cornea and lens onto the 126 million receptors of the retina, 120 million rods and 6 million cones which line the back of the eye. As the visual system seeks and acts on information from the environment, retinal inputs leads to ocular adjustments and then to alter retinal inputs as the eyes actively engage the environment. Receptors in the retina then transform and reduce information from light into electrical impulses which are then transmitted by the optic nerve from each eye to the brain's visual thalamus and onto the visual cortex where the vision actually occurs. In the thalamus, before conscious recognition of the object is achieved, the message is split into two processing routes which are key to the understanding of how perception works. The first route, the thalamo-amygdala pathway, is a crude network which LIDACs, described as quick and dirty, that sends signals directly to the amygdala, the emotions center of the brain. In this part of process, the perceived shape of the situation is quickly matched to others stored in emotional memory, and an emotional response then is framed that is in keeping with the past positive or negative experience. Although we are not aware of the process, the end result is felt by us most dramatically as fight or flight response in extreme situations or in non-life threatening situations as a feeling or attitude that sets up our cognitive thinking, skewing it automatically towards a particular response. The second slower route, the cortical pathway, transmits signals to the cortex where they are refined and again sent to the amygdala for emotional coloring. It is in the cortex that we first become aware of what we see, but by then the process has already activated certain emotions and responses out of the range of our consciousness. It is this aspect that is also difficult for the average person to grasp, because our brain continues to fool us into thinking that our rational being is in charge. As Gazzaniga noted, by the time we think we know something, it is part of our conscious experience. The brain has already done its work. Systems built into the brain do their work automatically and largely outside of our conscious awareness. The brain finishes the work half a second before the information it processes reaches our consciousness. Although it may seem counterintuitive, the quick and dirty thalamo-amygdala pathway which engages the limbic system still remains our first line of defense and has many more one-way connections to the thinking of cortex than the cortex has to its emotion, which is generated by the limbic system, refers not to something that the mind or brain does or has, but to different kinds of responses mediated by separate unconscious neural systems. These systems, which feed vision and other sensory processes, have evolved to accomplish behavioral goals associated primarily with survival and reproduction. They function unconsciously and, according to LIDACs, enter awareness only as outcomes and only in some instances. It is this emotional aspect of visual communication that is limited in patients fitted with the artificial tactile visual device, even though male subjects tested had become practiced viewers and were able to accurately describe what they were seeing through the device, they remained emotionally unmoved by what they saw. The cortical pathway supplements and complements the emotional one and is slower and involves more evolutionarily developed structures. As a more refined signal progresses towards conscious recognition, it moves through separate brain areas in the visual cortex. In the area termed phi 1, general scanning is done in which points in the visual cortex match the external visual field. Here the picture is distorted, paralleling the foveal and peripheral vision fields of the eye. The fovea, the only part of the retina that sees with clarity, is more densely packed with neurons and so takes up a larger part of the phi 1 image. Area phi 5, a separate area specialized for detecting motion, receives signals from phi 1 and also directly from the retina. Because seeing change and the motion of a potential predator is one of the most important capabilities in survival, it is important that the brain receives this information as quickly as possible. In the visual cortex, electrical signals sent from the retina are processed by thousands of specialized modules, each of which corresponds to a small area of the retina. In the diagram, phi 2, phi 3, phi 4 are not cited because they are on the other side of the view. When we ask the question where, for example, a pathway involving areas phi 1, phi 2, phi 3, phi 5 and phi 6 is activated. When we ask what a pathway from phi 1, phi 2, phi 4 is activated, there are 4 parallel systems involved in the different attributes of vision, one for motion, one for color and 2 for form. Color is perceived when cells specialized to detect wavelength in phi 1 signal to other specialized areas in phi 4 and phi 2. Form in association with color is detected by a circuit of connections between phi 1, phi 2 and phi 4. Perception of motion and dynamic form occurs when cells in layer 4b of phi 1 send signals to areas phi 3 and phi 5 and through phi 2. Cells in phi 6 determine objective positioning. This symphony of intricate and delicate biochemical and electric rhythms comes together as perception. In the visual fine arts, neurologist Semir Zeki has used this knowledge to explore how artists have utilized the active process of vision as a means of gathering information to express a unified truth within an ephemeral world. Zeki commented, vision is an active process in which the brain, in its quest for knowledge about the visual world, discards, selects and by comparing the selected information to its stored record, generates the visual image in brain, a process remarkably similar to what an artist does. The function of art and the function of the brain, he concluded, are both the same: to find and represent the constant, lasting, essential and enduring features of objects, surfaces, faces and situations. Zeki observed, for example, that the Fauvists who tried to liberate color from form faced an impossible task. Although color and form are processed separately by the brain, they are so intimately linked that only an extreme pathological condition could separate them. Conversely, according to Zeki, Cubism's attempt to find the essence and permanence of things within changing views of its mimics the brain's ability to integrate successive views of objects and people as they move within the environment or as we move around them within a given space into a single image. In the process of perception, data are reduced and compressed, and what was once a retinal image becomes not a camera-like picture of external reality, but rather a representative map of the visual field. In this way, light is transformed into meaning built from separate specific functions in the brain. The eye, triggered by the attention system of the brain, is continually and automatically darting about to gather the specific information that will form the mental image. Both the eyes and the external world are in continuous motion. The brain creates from this motion a stable mental configuration that can be described as an image. An image, Damasio explained, consists of a neural pattern that represents the highest level of biological phenomenon. The ability to hold the image over a time, a process described as working memory, is ultimately the basis of extended consciousness. The image that we ultimately perceive is unified, not because the mind sees a picture of what is really out there, but because the specialized areas in the visual cortex link 4 parallel systems into a vast network, a network in which reentrant connections allow information to flow both ways to resolve conflicts between the cells. This network, neuro researcher Jackie speculated, allows information processed in different places to be combined through synchronicity, yields perception and comprehension simultaneously. There is many neurologists believe no single area in the brain where all of the different sensory regions converge in such a way as to form the base for an integrated mind. Instead, there is a system of modules, each within its own local attention and working memory devices. Our sense of ourselves as beings with a rational integrative mind in control is just an illusion. Our strong sense of mind integration, Damasio explained, is created from the concerted action of a large scale system by synchronizing sets of neural activity in separate brain regions, in effect a trick of timing. In the figure FCB grid, on the left to right horizontal axis of the grid, consumers are seen as making decisions based on some relative degree of thinking and feeling, while on the top to bottom vertical axis, the relative importance of the decision is weighed from a high to low. In this model, high priced items such as appliances, for which consumers are likely to compare features and relative costs, would demand more rational reasons and fact content or hard sell arguments to persuade people to purchase. Products such as cigarettes, which suggest no logical reasons for purchase and which until very recently have been relatively inexpensive at the onset of a tobacco habit, however, demand a more soft sell and feeling approach. The former lends itself to verbal argument, the latter to the visual persuasion through images. As the late advertising guru David Ogilvy told us, writing advertising for any kind of liquor is an extremely subtle art. I once tried using rational facts to argue the consumer into choosing a brand of whiskey, he said. You do not catch Coca-Cola advertising that Coke contains 50% more cola berries. Next time an apostle of hard sell questions the importance of brand images, ask him how Marlboro climbed from obscurity to become the biggest selling cigarette in the world. Leo Burnett, whose advertising agency is responsible for the Marlboro Man, explained that the most effective image resonates deep within the psyche. The most powerful advertising ideas are non-verbal, he said, and take the form of statements with visual qualities made by the archetypes. Their true meanings lie too deep for words. Somewhere in every product are the seeds of a drama which best expresses the product's value to the consumer. Finding and staging this inherent drama of the product is the creative person's most important task. Such images utilize the right hemisphere's ability to discern patterns, to ignore detail, to respond emotionally and to learn visually and holistically. The warning label, however, appears in verbal language and is read by the different areas of the brain, if indeed it is read at all. Both the FCB, advertising planning, grid and brain neurology recognize that when high social or ego involvement is the prime motivating factor, cognitive appeals are likely to be ineffectual. Footy, Coney and Belding's advertising planning grid. Horizontally, the sliding scale moves from the predominance of thought to feeling in terms of their relative influence on consumer behavior. Vertically, the grid moves from low to high involvement. All products and services can be placed on the grid and through social and marketing research and subsequently positioned to determine the appropriate mix of cognitive and emotional appeals to sell them effectively. Visual design elements invariably draw the eye away from the words, and the verbal format of the warning also ensures that the message, if read, will be processed differently. Not only are words processed differently by the brain, but also their nature is more experientially remote and less directly emotionally involving, particularly for youngsters. Brains, it seems, were built to process visual images with great speed and to respond to them with alacrity. They did not evolve a process written verbal symbols in the same way. Brains were not built to read. Gazzaniga told us, reading is a recent invention of human culture. That is why many people have traveled with the process and why modern brain imaging studies show that the brain areas involved with reading move around a bit. Our brains have no place dedicated to this new invention. In short, visual images have right brain appeal, while verbal arguments are grabbed by the left brain for processing. This is why patients with damage to the left hemisphere may suffer speech problems, but those with damage to the right hemisphere are more likely to have perceptual and attentional problems. As stated earlier, there are fundamentally two information processing systems in the brain, the cortical pathway and the thalamo-amygdala pathway. Until the mid-1980s, it was generally hypothesized that emotion had to come after conscious and unconscious thought processing. Richard Lazarus, for example, argued that emotional research required cognitive appraisal as a precondition. It has now been shown, however, that the brain accomplishes its goals in an absence of awareness, and that perception is not a system per se, but a description of what goes on in a number of specific neural systems. In the amygdala, a subcortical region burned deep within the temporal lobe, emotional and significance is attached to the incoming data and readies the body to act before the mind makes conscious decision to act. Sensory signals from the eye travel first to the thalamus and then in a kind of short circuit to the amygdala before second signal reaches the neocortex. Leo Dux explained, the critical systems that try to do this understanding are only involved in the emotional process after the fact. Beneath the cerebral cortex lies the anterior commissure, which connects deep subcortical non-thinking regions of the brain, so that even if the left hemisphere of the split brain person cannot name a stimulus, it is nevertheless capable of receiving emotional information about it. There exists in the brain, in fact, a fundamental dichotomy between thinking and feeling, between cognition and emotion, which runs deeper, even left and right brain asymmetry. The older emotional pathway, which allows raw emotions to connect with the thinking areas of the hemispheres, is that quick and dirty emotional route that connects the cortex and neocortex to the limbic system. There is, in consequence, a measurable time gap between the action and the consciousness of the action. As early as 1950s, Libet demonstrated in experiments that the conscious will to act comes only after we initiate action, not before. Because of this delay, the mind is also geared to anticipate what is coming, which it does by calling up templates of past experience to predict the future. According to Gazzaniga, what we see is not what is on the retina at any given instant, but is a prediction of what will be there. Some system in the brain takes old facts and makes predictions as if our perceptual system were a virtual and continuous movie in our mind. Ledox explained that this is truly advantageous to our survival, because in critical situations the instinctual responses must not only move rapidly through the limbic system, but also must use emotional memory predictively if we are to survive. Gazzaniga also suggested that although it is counterintuitive to our sense of rationality, one of the chief ways we use our cognitive faculties is to rationalize what has already been emotionally decided. Human beings, he explained, have a centric view of the world and like to think of ourselves as directing the show most of the time. He argued, however, that the illusion that we are directing our actions simply appears to be true because of a special device in our left brain called the interpreter. This device creates the illusion that we are in charge of our actions and does so by interpreting our past, the prior actions of our nervous system. Reconstruction of events starts with the perception and goes all the way up to human reasoning. The mind is the last to know things. Gazzaniga's interpreter, a special device in the left hemisphere of the brain, operates on the activities of other adaptations built into the brain through evolution and reconstructs the automatic activities of the brain in order to maintain an integrated view of the world and holistic sense of the self. Although these automatic activities are cortically based, they are nevertheless outside of our conscious awareness, and the role of the interpreter is to construct theories to assimilate perceived information into a comprehensible whole. We need something that expands the actual facts of our experience into an ongoing narrative, the self-image we have been building in our mind for years. The spin doctoring that goes on keeps us believing we are good people, that we are in control and mean to do good. It is probably the most amazing mechanism that the human being possesses. A series of experiments in which identical stimuli produced a whole range of rationalizations. Many serve to illustrate in one. A number of parts of identical nylon stockings were laid down out and women were asked to choose one. When asked the basis for their choice, each was able to cite reasons ranging from differences in color to texture and quality. Here, rational cognition is used to justify an irrational choice. The lesson brought to you how neurological networks coordinate one another to send signals to amygdala and root thalamus. The story of transmission of signals from 5-1 to 5-5 from I2 thalamus to amygdala has been pictorially demonstrated here. It must be remembered that a person's response to visuals is neither logical nor rational. In this lesson, we try to convey to you that the latest neurological research points to the fact that visuals can be processed and can form the basis of future action without passing through consciousness. It would also be pertinent in this lesson to know how susceptible the children and youth to emotions throughout the visuals in the way they think and act. As Antonio Damasio observed, neurological research has shown us that we are not primarily thinking beings who also feel, but essentially feeling beings who also think. As Davidson and Irwin noted, emotion guides action and organizes behavior towards salient goals. The amygdala has been consistently identified as playing a crucial role in both the perception of emotional cues and the production of emotional responses.